Hello to YouTube. This is a review on Volt Work Solutions. I wanted to make this review to kind of warn people, and not necessarily warn people, but give my thoughts on the company. Now, Volt is basically um, a staffing company. Basically, what they do is, let's say you have a company and you need people to work at the company. They do the hiring for you. A couple of years back, there was an ad for a job that they weren't specific on where the job was going to be taking place, but it ended up being a job working for Tesla. So I got the job. I go into work. First off, they promised me a certain amount of money. They did not go, you know, beyond that. Uh, I didn't get that amount of money. They also told me that the job position would be Monday through Friday, 5 in the morning to whatever time at night, in the afternoon, I'm sorry. And so, I mean, everything was good. So then I show up to my first day of work, which they told me. And, I showed up and was ready to work. I had to wait 3 hours outside of Tesla because Volt forgot to tell us that the correct starting time was going to be something else. So we get there, and that was like a 12-hour day at the company. So, you know, at the beginning, a couple of us started asking questions after the first week of 7 days a week, 12-hour days. And if anybody wants to see like paychecks and stuff where it tells you how many hours some of us were putting in, or the majority of us were putting in, it was, sometimes I would get there a little bit earlier because it was in Fremont and I live like 45 minutes away. So it's 45 minutes plus the time to get ready to work, plus the 12 hours that you would work. So it's like 5 o'clock in the afternoon to 5 o'clock in the morning. Then you have to drive back home, and then you have to get ready to go to bed, only to get up, again at like 12 o'clock to try to do some stuff so that you can, go to work again. So, um, when I asked Volt basically said that I should look at it this way: that um, the company, technically, I didn't have to stay and work the 12-hour shift, but that it was in my interest to work the 12-hour shift because that'll make the company kind of want to keep me. So I worked for my 12 hours for 3 months straight. I think I ended up getting Christmas off, and that was half a day off. I remember coming home Christmas, like Christmas Eve morning, and then I had to go back to work on the 26th. So, I was done with my time, and I ended up getting a phone call in the morning uh, telling me that my duties were no longer required. Um, so then I was like, oh great, then that means that they're gonna call me in a couple of weeks to get a full-time position. I was never late or anything. So I call Volt and I tell them, how long does it usually take to get a request, or not a request, but like, a contract again. They're like, well, it takes a while. I'll take down your information and I'll give you a call. So I wait and I wait and I call them back in a week, and they've forgotten who I was. So then, really nicely, the gentleman goes, give me your information. I'll give you a call in a week. Week passes. I call them back. They didn't know who I was again. And it was kind of like this for a month until I really said, fuck it. So I ended up getting another job. I ended up getting, get their emails a lot. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to continue applying. Anytime that you apply to something, you will never get a response back. It's almost kind of like they're fishing for like anything. So there was a position, kind of like it has something to do with Lucasfilm. I have a acting career. I have a public speaking career. Uh, or background, and fantastic. I sent my resume. I called them a whole bunch of times. Uh, then finally, I called them up, and it was kind of not to pick a fight, but to kind of be like, what the fuck, like what's going on? And they told me that position was no longer available, and that they would take my information if I could just email them my resume. So I emailed them my resume, and didn't hear from them again. And then a couple of days later, I ended up getting an email, and that position was still posted. Uh, little things like that with Volt. It always kind of feels when you walk into the office, there's a whole bunch of younger kids working there. It just doesn't seem like it's a really well uh, thought out plan what they do. Um, I've applied to like 100 positions, and 95% of the time, uh, when I call them, they say that they're filled. Yet I end up getting like the exact same job posting 2 weeks out, and basically the only thing they have is retail. You know, so I mean, I would say be careful. I didn't feel that they backed me up when I was dealing with the whole situation of having to work there 12 hours a day, 7 days a week for 3 months straight, and we did not get overtime. So I think we got like time and a half, and I think when you work a Sunday, it has to be double time. Well, they got around that somehow, so we would only be getting paid the bare minimum. So, uh, so yeah, it has nothing to do with Tesla. I think Tesla, they fed, every Saturday and Sunday they had food for, they're like, food for their employees and stuff. But I think Volt really drops the ball a lot by not being 100% on it. Anyway, so I mean, I would avoid them. I'm gonna try to give them a call tomorrow to try to get like a little interview set up on how they actually do things, because don't really don't really feel it's fair that I'm getting all these postings for job interviews, and then I try to apply for them and I get my hopes up, and then it's like, I'm qualified for the position, I'm a good person, and I don't, I would pass a drug test, and yet nobody nobody has the foresight, and then it's like one of those things where it's like I'm constantly bothering them to try to get me in or something, but for some reason, I've gone in there to talk to them like 10 times already and nothing happens. So this is just a heads up on Volt Workforce Solutions. Thank you.